Hello, I'm Michael Johnson and welcome to the Game Watcher review of Xenonauts. Xenonauts is indie studio Goldhawk Interactive's attempt to remake PC strategy classic XCOM. If you're unfamiliar with the project, it would at this point be fair to say, wait a second, didn't XCOM already get remade 2 years ago by Firaxis? And wasn't it pretty awesome? Well, the answer to both of those questions is yes. It is, however, worth bearing in mind that Xenonauts entered development before the XCOM remake had even been announced, and besides, it provides us with a very different modernised take on the classic game. With XCOM Enemy Unknown, Firaxis were retooling the franchise for a modern audience rather than simply bringing the classic up to date. It introduced a cover system and a more basic movement and action system. Xenonauts preserves not just the feel of XCOM, but many of its exact mechanics, while giving the UI a much needed overhaul. While XCOM is still playable using DOSBox, the game is in an eye-meltingly low resolution, and the UI is a confusing mess of icons that requires either the manual or a really good memory to fully comprehend. Xenonauts, being a modern game, has the benefit of tooltips and higher resolutions, which, sounds like a small thing, but it actually makes a huge difference to the experience. Other aspects that have been given a fresh lick of paint include the tactical battles that were made up of very basic sprites. Even if XCOM did have very stylised art and the unforgettable Guile from Street Fighter haircuts for your male soldiers, it still remained a pretty ugly game to look at. Xenonauts retools this with a Cold War look that's more retro military than future sci-fi, and while fundamentally that doesn't change the game, it does give Xenonauts a sense of its own identity that might otherwise be missing. The core of the XCOM experience has always been the turn-based tactical combat, and Xenonauts brings us a very faithful adaptation of that. For instance, it retains the time units used for both movements and action, so if you're expecting to move into range of an alien and attack them in the same turn, you need to plan ahead very carefully. There's a handy option to put enough time units in reserve, which allows you to put your soldiers into a sort of Overwatch mode, similar to the modern XCOM, although it must be said that this is often extremely ineffective, and it's not uncommon to see your troops miss even at extreme close range. Combat can be incredibly tense, and your soldiers can persist and advance between missions while generally remaining very fragile, so they'll get better at shooting and reacting to enemy units, but until you manage to get some heavy research done, they're still extremely vulnerable. Needless to say, unless you're some kind of save scum who will refuse to allow bad things to happen, your soldiers will die, and it will be absolutely devastating. If you're brave enough, play in Ironman Mode, which disables saving altogether, forcing you to rely on a single autosave. Ironman Mode gives the game a sense of inevitable calamity, and an overriding atmosphere of dread that supports the game's mechanics, upping the stakes considerably. The combat takes place from an isometric perspective, moving your soldiers from above. There's no cinematic camera here, and while the sprites are nice enough, animations are limited, and there are some weird bugs. For instance, when a civilian dies, they often emit the same death cry as an alien, so there may be some kind of invasion of the body snatchers twist going on here, but I'm pretty sure it's just a bug. You can take 10 soldiers with you onto the battlefield, which makes for larger scale conflicts than in the new XCOM, though it must be said, rookie units are pretty terrible until they have a few missions under their belt. Away from the turn-based action, there's a new strategic overlay and world map. This is where you track UFOs, send out your interceptors, as well as building your base and managing the various aspects of it. Tracking aliens is done automatically by your satellite arrays, so when one comes in range of one of your bases, you send out the interceptors to shoot them down. If you plan on recovering any technology, you'll need to do this over land, so you can send in an assault team to attack the downed craft. There's a sort of mini-game based on your interceptors that's more involved than that of the original game. In it, you direct your planes and instruct them when to fire their missiles. For my money, this is one of the weaker parts of Xenonauts, and the option to auto-resolve these battles is very welcome indeed. Maintaining your base is a complex task. You need to assign research, choose new buildings for construction, ensure you have enough living space to hire scientists, engineers and soldiers. Soldiers can be equipped individually and assigned to roles, which allows them to swap between gear sets quickly. One of the biggest annoyances of the original XCOM was the amount of micromanagement you had to perform, manually ensuring that each soldier had enough bullets It's to avoid those embarrassing situations where your machine gunner would run up to an alien, level his chain gun at their grayscale face and let loose a barrage of deadly thin air. Fortunately, Xenonauts does away with this, and many other of the more mundane tasks are streamlined too. For instance, certain kinds of research may upgrade your interceptor's missiles, and once your scientists finish the project, your ships will automatically be outfitted with the new weapons. Xenonauts is a worthy update to a classic game. While Firaxis' own XCOM remake was excellent, this is a fundamentally different game. If you're an XCOM veteran longing for the broad scope and freedom of the original, Xenonauts is an excellent addition to your game library. It may not be as flashy or polished as the Firaxis game, but it improves XCOM in just the right places, blending new and old elements into a satisfying whole. We award Xenonauts 8 out of 10.